we're done. Next up is the Auckland Council. Auckland.
You need to have a character.
So I'd got it out of kilter and we moved it earlier on, so we're all good. We're moving on to the next item. And so Q2 report for Auckland Transport. Dave, and just a reminder, this is a look back between September and December and an assessment of Auckland Transport performance. So Dave, well done, all yours.
Kia ora koutou, councillors. Excuse me. So yes, presenting the Q2 report for AT. This is the performance report for the period ending 31st of December 2024. The report is attached and is taken as read. We'll just cover off some of the highlights and key concerns for you all from the report, and then we'll hand over to Dean and the team for any questions. Moving straight into the performance measures, AT are currently meeting or exceeding 17 of their 23 performance measures. 6 are currently not on track or currently not meeting expectations. The AT listens and responds measure has dropped 4 points during this quarter to 27%. The other measures not currently met are public boardings. These have increased, but not as much as forecast. Transport utilisation, fare box recovery ratio, and there's a note that that's been impacted by reduced rail and bus patronage during December. Safety, which we'll speak to in a second, and the percentage of procurement with Māori-owned businesses. In terms of the SOI deliverables for Q2, 33 of the 40 deliverables are currently on track, with 4 having been completed. 3 deliverables are at risk currently, including delivering on better, faster consents, and 2 related to growing external revenue. Speaking of finance, AT's years to date surplus from operations, excluding depreciation of 36 million, is 31 million, favourable to budget. The favourable variance is largely driven by lower operational expenditure, strong cost controls across the organisation, and combined with reduced inflationary pressure. Just bring up some highlights from the quarter. This includes local board satisfaction, which has reached an all-time high of 71%. 240 kilometres of roads have been resurfaced, which is 20% more than the previous year. And 785 potholes have been filled within that 95% target response time. Improvements have been made on public transport fares, including the rollout of the contactless payments launching in November, and has already surpassed 1 million trips by January. The Northwest Busway celebrated 5 million passenger trips in its first year, exceeding the 3.5 million target. Public transport and network optimisation, including examples such as the Crosstown and Outer Link changes in November, which led to immediate patronage increases, and new bus lanes on Triangle Road and Fred Taylor Drive have enhanced priority for over 400 buses per day. It's a shame that the Mayor is not here, so he might appreciate this next one. Over 700 redundant traffic management items have been removed, including over 650 road cones. 650 road cones. Wow. There we go. Something to celebrate. Yeah. Yes, maybe a few more to go, but it's a great start, so well done to AT. Just highlighting some of the risks, as we highlighted before, reputation, trust and confidence continues to be a priority area for AT, with the public confidence metric during 4 points during this quarter. Safety remains a core component of that trust and confidence, and it's noted there's been increased incidents of violence and aggression across the network. In response, AT have implemented several measures, including 12 new transport officers, installing CCTV on buses, and planning safety screens for 80% of buses by 2026. AT have also identified that another risk is CCO reform and legislative change. This could pose a risk to the delivery of their capital works program, and so executive governance and transition planning is in place to mitigate that. And as we heard just in the previous item, the seamless transition to AT of CRL remains a priority, with the risks being managed by the Program Control Group, and independent quality assurance is underway to manage this. So that is all the highlights. I'll now invite Dean and the team to answer any questions.
Yeah, kia ora and good morning, councillors. It's always good to be here to talk through the business of transport in Auckland, so thank you very much for the opportunity. The report is as read. We've had a good summary of where we see success and where we're focused on in terms of challenges. Those lists are never comprehensive. Remember, this report is to the end of December, and here we are early March. So some of these things you will have heard about already, but it's good to be reminded of them. On that note, we are more than happy to take any questions on what you see in front of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dean. Okay, questions. So first up, Wayne.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it, that when I read the report earlier, I seem to recall that at some point there was a mention of as much as 20% of a project cost being due to matters to do with safety. And then I think there was another figure of maybe it was 6 or 7% that you'd brought it down to. I'm assuming that the number of road cones correlate with that, perhaps. So I just wonder what impact this is going to have going forward on costs, given that you've got safety in pretty much part of every project, and that's a pretty significant change. And I'm assuming that there'll be a correlation with mobility, that is the ability of people to move around Auckland more effectively, and no doubt that's a big benefit too.
Look,
question.
I'll just cover off a couple of elements and then hand to Murray. So whilst you've seen 750 or thereabouts cones picked up, the real game here is shifting from a code of practice that was quite arbitrary in what you had to set out to a risk-based approach. And that is what we now have. That was passed in November last year. So that will inherently reduce the number of cones and the footprint associated with works. So that's a good thing. We're not counting how many we're avoiding. We've just given you a number on how many we have removed that aren't being used. The high percentage cost associated with temporary traffic management on AT projects tended to be for smaller ones. The average cost is now 8%, it's in this report. And where we have programs of work, like larger corridors as opposed to small projects, that cost can be down circa 5% or less. So there has been a lot of work done on right-sizing this and protecting safety of those working in the road environment. The other thing I want councillors to be reminded of is that our advice to all those working in the road space was, if you can do your work, which is our expectation, outside of peak, you inherently reduce the risk. Yeah. It is safer to do it overnight, away from moving traffic, or off peak. So the construction industry, the feedback to me is quite positive around that, because fast moving objects with only an orange cone protecting you isn't actually as safe as what it might be assumed. So there's a lot of good things here. Murray, is there anything that you want to add in on that? I just want to cover off those higher order issues.
Yeah, sure. So absolutely, across our program of delivery, we're looking to lower costs and achieve value for money. Reduce costs on temporary traffic management is definitely part of that, and you can see in the report already significant progress has been made in that space. But we're also looking more broadly across our capital delivery, taking into account the feedback we've had from the Revenue Expenditure and Value Committee about driving value for money through all the project delivery. Bear in mind that only 30% of the work out there on the road network is Auckland Transport, and we're doing our best to minimise disruption in that space. We're also partnering with the utilities and private developers to see what they can do to minimise disruption and drive down traffic management costs on their side of the equation. Thanks.
Just a couple of related questions, Mr. Chair. The first one is just around public input, and what I mean by that is in a circumstance where a member of the public notices perhaps an improvement around cones or the like, do you have a facility in your call centre where you actually capture that separately so you can follow up on it? Because people talk to me about things and they just say, well, look, you know, they're doing this. Doesn't make any sense to me. There's nobody working there, or it could be done differently. So just a question around whether you're engaging and capturing that sort of information separately so you can follow it up fast.
There's a lot of engagement, there's a lot of feedback, and we do follow up as fast as we can, and it comes in via multiple channels. I get them from some people, the call centre gets them, and we've also got a report a cone function on the website. So look, there's lots of ways, but if you're aware of something and want us to follow through on it, then please feel free to send it to Murray or I, and we get it to the right people in the team.
Okay, and just one other question, Mr. Chair, and that's just around advice. So the observation I make and people make to me is often they've got a trip, you know, from A to B, and all of a sudden they strike some works that they didn't know about. They're effectively trapped. When if there had have been some signage, even some simple signage somewhere else in the network, so they know that, okay, there's delays this route, they can make a choice. I just make the observation that also occurs on the motorway network with NZTA, when sometimes maybe past 9 o'clock or the like, sometimes part of the motorway network shuts down. That happened to me in the vicinity of Drury, Constellation and Silverdale on one instance, and it really clogs up the network. So my question is there some proposition around having some signage to just advise people so they know?
Look, it's yes, there is, and it's also problematic. I mean, I use Google Map. That's pretty reliable, so I encourage people, if they're planning the journey, then to check Google Map. We've got disruption information on our own AT mobile app. I think my challenge, like many Aucklanders, is we tend to jump in the car and we head off on our route, and then we hit it, and then we have a look to see what's going on. So if people are really concerned they need to be at a place in a specific time, then there is ways of better understanding the disruption on the network and how they might plan their journey. I would encourage them to use those. With thousands of construction sites across Auckland, including NZTA at any one point in time, this is a very complex task. I don't want to make it bigger than what it is, but it is a complex task. And as we've talked a lot about here, 30% of the disruption on the road network is out of Auckland Transport. 70% is by other organisations, developers, utility companies, whatever. And the timing of that is very difficult for us to manage.
Right, thank you. Billy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora koutou. We note there are several projects occurring or pending for Marae and Papakainga development, and that mana whenua are being consulted on 37 other projects. Could you please ensure a list of these projects are sent to the Haukura Secretariat to ensure greater insights and updates of those projects, please?
Yes, and I'm surprised that it hasn't happened, but we will make sure that it does. Thank you very much.
And lastly, just what strategies have been put in place to ensure greater engagement with Mātāwaka, given AT only received 3.7% of the total feedback from these Māori entities?
Rather than me answering that, I know I've had discussions with Lillian Tahuri and Scott Campbell, who lead this, so I would prefer they came back to you with a written response about our engagement with Mātāwaka, but I do know that a lot of effort is going in to better understand that and how we might do it, and we have engaged directly with Haukura on it, but can I ask that they come back to you with a written response on the engagement strategy and progress today? Thank you.
Yeah, ka pai. Thank you, Dean. Thanks.
Thanks, Billy. And just a reminder, it's not a commentary on your question, but we keep it on the on the report if we can. Shane?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions on the program to raise speeds around the region. So the program's about to start, so can I assume the funding packet's been finalised?
Sorry, I missed that last part of your question, Shane.
Sorry, yes, so the program to raise speeds around the region, that's about to start, right? So have we finalised the funding packet for that work?
So, hang on. So, as I said at the start, we are keeping on track with what this report is. This report is a quarterly report, and so what has happened between September and December, not what is coming, and I don't know if you were here, but there is a workshop coming for us with Auckland Transport to talk about the approach to speed and speed rules. So if we can stick to questions in regards to the report, the quarterly report, not what is coming, it would be really, really appreciated, because we do not want to be, we're just starting to be a little fox terrier digging around the front of a rabbit hole. So on the report, please.
I understand that, Chair, but the workshop can't be scheduled in time for the start of the program rollout.
So again, we are
It's public
talking about,
interest.
we are talking about this report. We are not going to be diving down rabbit holes and starting to talk about stuff that is normally contained within an Auckland Transport update report. This is a quarterly report presented to us by council staff on what has occurred in the quarter between September and December. So if you have questions on that, please, if you've got questions on things that are not in relation to this report, you can either take them up offline or you can wait until we have the workshop.
So can I just seek your guidance on that? So would you suggest I ask next month when the program's started and things have rolled out and money is starting to be spent? Because I'm asking about financial questions around that.
But it is a quarterly look back. That's what the quarterly report is. And so, and you know that, you've been around long enough. And so this is a quarterly report looking at what has been presented from and done and achieved. Dave has presented it. Auckland Transport are here to talk about things and provide guidance on some of the things within that report, not to start talking about things that we have got coming, because as soon as we start that, we will be here for the rest of the day as we have spent. That's right. So we are not doing that. So on topic, please, and if you've got issues, as I said previously, if you've got things you want to have answered, you can approach Auckland Transport and they will provide the answer to you. And again, we're having a workshop on speed, so let's just keep it online.
Point of order, can I ask then why we don't have an Auckland Transport update on the agenda today? We normally do get a monthly one, which would provide an opportunity, and we do not have that. We only have this Q2 performance report, and you're telling us we can only ask questions about a specific time period. So why do we not have the normal agenda item that we do usually have every month, Auckland Transport update, for us to be able to have a platform for those questions?
And so this month, it is replaced by the quarterly report, which it has done, well, you can look at me like that all you like, Julie, but that is how it has worked. And so, sorry that it doesn't suit what you want to talk about, but we have this month an Auckland Transport quarterly report. We will have an update next month, and that is how it has worked. So, you know.
Chair, can you confirm that that has been the case since this committee was formed under the chairmanship of John Watson back in 2022?
Yes, the magnificent. I can't talk about.
I can confirm.
But it has certainly been that way
the...
since I've been the chair. Okay, thank you. Daniel?
Good morning to Auckland Transport, and thank you for being here. My report is absolutely specific on the quarterly report. It goes to I had some questions with respect to the road maintenance and the potholes promise. So can I just get the definitional understanding of the potholes fill? Is that basically fill it with the seal, and that is a temporary fix until possibly a more comprehensive seal will be delivered in the future, or is that the seal itself, which is basically going to be in place until we find the next fracture which causes the water ingress? Can you just explain the potholes promise in terms of what meets the definition of that seal?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Councillor. So there's two pots of money that we use for road maintenance and renewals. So under the OPEX funding, we do exactly what you said. If the pothole appears in the network, there's a quick fix in terms of filling the pothole and putting a patch over the top of it. That is, how do I describe it? The technology for that quick fix is improving all the time, and historical measures which may have failed again quite quickly, we're working to do much better technology in terms of that maintenance fix. So the first repair is just under maintenance. There's another program of work which is the long-term renewals and resurfacing program, which is capital funded, and that we have a program of work that rolls out year on year for the most highly deteriorated parts of the network, where there's a full resurfacing from curb to curb on the road. So areas where potholes are reoccurring frequently will definitely be high up on the list for a proper rehabilitation and renewal of that road surface. Thank you.
Has that started yet, or is that the work to come?
That's an ongoing program of work, so it started, yes.
Follow up, if I may, Chair, because I actually think that Auckland Transport's done some quite good work in this space. I think there have been some better and more timely improvements, which is really helpful. But with respect to it refers to the under 24 hours in arterial roads. Is there a time frame for the local roads beyond the arterials for which there is a target for a potholes fix promise?
Yes, so on arterials, we're targeting 24 hours. On local roads or low volume roads, it's 5 days.
Okay, and the 5 days, but you're still obviously working towards the initial fix and then the sealed program to address the more substantive challenge in relation to that road will follow on the same time frame?
Yes, so the pothole promise is around the quick fix to 24 hours on arterials, 5 days on low volume roads. The longer term road resurfacing and renewals, that isn't done within 5 days. No, that's on a ongoing program of work where we plan 3 years in advance and then we roll it out on an annual program. So the list of roads for renewal and resurfacing is available on an annual basis.
Okay, John.
Point of order. Chair, you claimed that we, and this was backed up by your Deputy Chair, that we do not normally have a quarterly performance and a transport update. In May 2023, item 11 was the quarterly update for quarter 2, and item 12 was the Auckland Transport update for that month. So I repeat my question, why do we not have that on the agenda when we have had it in the past?
Because it's not a set matter, and so we're having an update this time. We'll have an update next time. We're having the quarterly report this time, and so apologies if I wasn't quite on the money, but this is what is happening this time, and if you've got suggestions about agendas, you can always come and have a chat, Julie.
Well, I note that the committee was misled by several councillors around the table as to the normal practice in the past, and it's really disappointing.
It's also on the Forward, I'm just advised, it's also on the Forward Work Programme, which you'll be well aware of, that we have the 3 quarterly updates. So we'll move on. Angela. Oh, sorry, John. All right, I took you off my list too soon, John.
Item 9, attachment A, page 33, point 2, improving network productivity. And I, this report? That one? Yeah. I just note the work that's going on there in terms of optimising the network, and particularly as it goes to intersections, and a number of projects have been completed. and there's a number of others on the way. I just want to ask, and I know this ends in December, but really this is something that's present all the time, of course, and particularly, with March, the March Madness rush. Am I correct in saying, Dean, that our control centre monitors a whole swag of intersections around Auckland, that we have, as it happens, footage of what's happening at those intersections?
Yeah. It's a mix of reactive and proactive. Okay, I think what we need to dispel is the assumption that all these intersections and the intelligence from them is being brought through and triaged, and where we've got an issue, that's automatically identified. That's the artificial intelligence layer across the network we don't have. But there's lots of cameras, we've got eyes on those cameras, we are looking to spot issues as they arise, or where we know, particularly when we made a change to an intersection or to the road layout, we do specifically monitor that so that we can adjust it in close to real time to improve performance. But I don't want people to think that there is this artificial intelligence layer across ATOC. It's not there. We haven't had the funding to make that investment, but it is a priority for us to consider. Yeah.
Okay, so just a quick follow-up then. So where it becomes apparent, something is happening, in terms of optimisation and flow through intersections, what's your advice, other than obvious to report it? So if we have a situation where perhaps over a protracted period of time, it's just not a one-off, what's the best approach then for both elected people and members of the public, of course, who are often experiencing it before elected people do, to take?
Look, if something's not making sense, then usually it's not, so I accept that, and we just encourage people to tell us what's happening at those intersections. But we're also monitoring them ourselves retrospectively to see what's going on, and the reasons for delay at any one intersection could be multiple. It might be that maybe the technology is not working at that intersection, or there might be a vehicle broken down, or there's lots and lots of reasons why we get congestion in different locations. Some people are busy looking at their phones instead of looking at the light. So we can see all of that. We've got camera footage that allows us to go back and triage what the reason is. So we will always be happy to have a look, and we're always looking to optimise, because our commitment is to flow through the network. We've got this aspiration of no journey across the arterial network should take more than 20 minutes over a 10k length at peak. So everything we do is looking at how do we enhance productivity through the network and to enable that movement. So I welcome the feedback, and we're always looking to improve.
Thanks, John. Angela.
Thank you. Page 37, attachment A, 3.3, taking public transport from good to great, specifically 3.10. There is increasing freight train movements in the morning, at peak morning times, disrupting commuter services. As Port of Auckland shifts more freight from truck to rail, is there any looming risk to reliable commuter services, as there is a contest for rail space?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Absolutely, in terms of that, and I think both ourselves and Kiwi Rail sort of looking at what that future train plan looks like, and in terms of, obviously from our perspective, we would love to see freight trains removed from the commuter peaks. It makes good sense in terms of prioritising people movement during that time of day. Of course, that does have a disbenefit in terms of freight movements and how they would potentially manage that, whether they moved earlier and held in certain places and that type of scenario. So I understand that's something that's being looked at. Being looked at by Kiwi Rail. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Julie.
Just going back to the safety on public transport and the work that's happening there, I just wanted to get an idea. You've got the 12 new transport officers installing CCTV, GPS, panic buttons. So whereabouts are the new transport officers and the 80% of bus screens by 2026? Is there any way that we can accelerate that at all? And comms that's going out to the community. Also, just want to acknowledge Stacey and the great work she's been doing with the public meetings.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of those transport officers, they just go into the general pool and are deployed based on the intelligence of the day. So they just extend in terms of, I guess, what they can actually do within their perimeters. So will you see something different from that? Not necessarily, but you're likely people will see more people more often in terms of where they're placed. They are really trying to build those different intelligence systems. So one of the other things that we've done is work with Crime Stoppers too, so that when anything is notified by that means we're actually getting what I would call trackable data and meaningful insights that people can then follow up on. And we had a couple of really good scenarios recently where that information was sent through instantaneously. There's more information to go by, and therefore we can get interventions and things put in place in terms of helping or de-risking the potential for any incident to occur. So we also have a crime prevention strategy underway, and we'll be talking a bit more about that in the months ahead. I think we have some presenting it to me next week, so I will bring it back here and sort of detail what else we're doing it. We're putting dedicated resource into working with community groups and our operators on sort of new initiatives. As far as the bus driver screen doors go, hard to do any acceleration. Now, there's a couple of reasons why for that. So we're currently waiting on what I call a bulk shipment, where we have a standardised fleet type across the network. That will see a big uplift over the next 2 months in terms of that June this year target. Then in order to get them done without what I'll call constraining services and peak service requirement, it's got to be sort of planned cadence in order to not what I'll call deterrent of the network, considering that the likes of school holidays and the likes we're actually using for rail replacement and things. So our fleet is very constrained, so taking them out on that cyclic basis and planned way means we won't have interruption to services, and that's why it's being done that way.
Thanks, Karen. Richard?
Thank you, Chair. Just page 28 of the attachment, Vision Zero. So obviously we are having to reduce or change the target because of budget. Is that correct? Around, unlikely, obviously that's got to do with the safe speeds too?
In terms of Vision Zero, we have our annual death serious injury target. We forecast a reduction this year. We're not quite there. You'll see that in the report. We're projecting to miss it slightly, but there's a number of actions that we've got in place, and we're looking at to see what else we could do to help bring that within the desired, I think it's 576. What we do know is, so we've got an unrelenting focus on reducing death and serious injury, which aligns with that Vision Zero aspiration. The other thing that's happened is that the way that we are funded for transport safety outcomes has also changed. And that shifted away from speed infrastructure, and it's now focused mostly on education, drug and alcohol testing and the like. So we have followed that because if we're going to achieve the outcome, that's where we need to go. We're advocating on additional speed cameras, working with the police to do as much as we can on joint education of drivers, particularly those that wish to drink or take drugs and then drive. We want them to know that we are watching and the chances of them being caught has increased. So there's a whole range of things we're trying to do that is outside of the physical infrastructure space. Having said that, we do have some money, and that is focused on high-risk intersections, high-risk, particularly high-risk rural roads, and other points in the network. So we're making the best we can of every dollar we've got, but it has changed.
Thanks. And it says in here most of the harm happens on local roads, with over half of that being people outside vehicles, walking, cycling, and motorcyclists. Without the speeds and with only the government only funding 9% of what we expected them to do on safety, it's mentioned here, but what's the kind of risk you guys are forecasting on that? If we don't have any of those tools.
We haven't done a specific risk analysis that I'm aware of. Some may in the organisation, so I can't speak for everybody in that regard. Look, the risk factor has changed, but the question is for us, does that mean we back off? And we haven't.
Okay.
And so the focus has now become, because the government's policy and funding direction is this way, and it is less in the things that we have traditionally done, we have to maximise every other dollar that they're spending in other ways to achieve the same outcome. So we've had to do a pretty significant pivot, and we're still in that process. Whether we've quite landed it exactly right, we'll know in time, but we're not slowing down or stopping. We've got to spend the money differently to what we have in the past.
And with the Tony Gibson case, health and safety case, are you, as the board or management of AT, have any concerns that we have been clear on the risks and the evidence, definitely for the local roads, and of course where community supported it, where we will be, where does the risk lie if you know you have the knowledge of risk and then we're switching out signs and things like that?
Yeah. Look, the Tony Gibson case, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to go there too much. The Tony Gibson case was quite different to the issue that we're confronted with around the road network. So I'm not sure that we can mix that. If we had a situation where, as the PCBU under health and work-safe legislation, we weren't responding to the safety of one of our employees in their occupational role, then that would be analogous to the Tony Gibson situation. But taking that case and then applying it to an intersection or a piece of rural road where you may have a drunk driver that doesn't handle the speed and ends up either being seriously injured themselves or injuring somebody else, that doesn't apply in this instance. Yeah, sorry, Stacey's got something she might be able to add to.
I understand your question, Councillor, and I think it's a fair question, and I suggest that what we sort of do on that too is sort of look at what is a PCBU responsible for versus what is, from a regulatory perspective, a legislative perspective. They're quite different things, but you're right to raise the concern on it in terms of, liability, because, everybody's decision makers, in terms of that. So we will do that. The other thing in terms of setting these targets is important to note it's not done in isolation. AT cannot do that in isolation. So whilst we may be doing some things over here, or obviously we're reducing things over here because of constraints that we have within the framework that we have to operate in, there's other things that the teams are doing that are substantial changes in terms of improvement and working with police and deterrence and the likes of that as well. So that has to be brought into the equation. You can see that obviously that's improved substantially over recent years, which is a big contributor to improvement, that deterrence part. But of course there's always more that can be sort of done in terms of that as well.
And just very last question, just the quarterly reports on the patronage. Obviously it's going to be way out because of the rail closures, but are we tracking where we want to be on ferry and bus? We can't, I feel like we're unfairly measuring things when they're closed.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And I'm glad you asked the question, because then I get to have a little bit of a rave about some good stuff, and I'll keep it nice and short. But in terms of that, we have seen a really big uplift over the last few weeks, and we were near 390 1,000 passenger boardings yesterday, which is good. So when we talk about modal equity and where everything is at, bus is right up to where it was if we think about the pre-COVID world. Train is still got a big chunk missing, so it's hovering around that 70%, and ferry is a little bit better, but not a great deal better. And I think my worry always remains with ferry, I think, for the foreseeable. Why? Because the opportunity to improve on that is less constrained than rail. We know that rail will get better once we get through this next year, yeah? And so we have confidence of that. Where ferry is obviously largely reliant in terms of population density within certain areas, because it is a point-to-point service. So if people are travelling less, then you're going to get, less movement, because you've got a confined sort of what I call spot in order to be able to move people on. But everything has substantially changed over the last 2 weeks. We knew it would. We had a really busy Monday, the busiest Monday we've seen for a very, very long time, and this week is tracking well. We had over 2 million boardings last week, and we will this week as well, which is really cool and it's good to see. And just as for interest purposes, we saw contactless is now sitting about 13% in terms of the volume of users that are using that with passenger boardings, which is really good.
How much, sorry?
13. It was 13 last week. And we had 8,800 Aucklanders take advantage of the $50 fare cap. So that's a big uplift on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie?
Thank you. So what work was undertaken by Auckland Transport in Q2 on the 3-year implementation plan and the 10-year vision for katoa ka ora that this group unanimously voted to endorse?
Yeah, look, the katoa ka ora as a program was paused when we got the new speed rule, and the intention was once that was passed into legislation, which it now has been, we would then need to reconsult on elements of it. So can I come back to you with a more full update, Councillor, or I don't have all that information at hand? I didn't come prepared for that answer, sorry.
So, supplementary then, what work was undertaken on the safer speeds reversal work in Q2?
The work, so look, when, and maybe it's useful just to summarise where we're at, but the work in Q2 on speed reversals was, first of all, to make sure that we had a clear view on what the new rule required and what its constraints were. To make sure that we understood what roads were captured by that rule, to then develop criteria around which those roads would then need to be considered for reversal or whether an exemption applied to them. And we set up a program management response to ensure that that we were able to implement according to the rule and the requirements of the law by the end of 30 June. So all that work was done last year, and this year we're now taking that work and engaging and implementing it.
So
I'm trying to limit my answer to last year.
Absolutely, and I'm trying to limit my questions to last year as well. So was there any work done with other territorial authorities in Q2 last year on this matter? Because I note that Auckland is reversing around 80%, Christchurch only about 5%.
Look, there was, and it's our intention to unpack this more fully as to what the difference is between Auckland and some of these other jurisdictions at the workshop next week. But there is some quite clear differences about how we approached it, how other authorities have approached it, and we can talk you through all of that.
Okay.
But yes, we have had that engagement. We've had a lot of engagement.
And some of that happened in Q2.
Yes, yeah, and that engagement continues.
I'm just bringing it back to Q2.
I know,
I'm just being
yes,
a good girl.
So the answer is on both. Yes to both, before, during, and after.
Thank you very much.
Joe?
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the PT boardings and whether we're tracking the impact in July when we stopped doing the half price, no, it was April when we stopped doing the half price fares, and whether the $50 cap has made any impact when we brought that in July. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we have. We did some work last week to sort of really understand in terms of where the patronage was sitting in terms of the concessions, given that we felt that we were down from where we thought we would be this time of year. Obviously, university has a lot to do with that when it started this week, a week later than it did last year. What it did show was that we've had a drop-off in child concessions. Yeah. And so reasonably significant, 12%, in terms of those child concessions, based on the same time last year. And you can see that sort of slide off through the year, obviously, is that concession has come off. That is what stood out to us in the data from that particular deep dive into understanding concessions. So that, yes, there has been a decline in use. Would put that down to a couple of things. Obviously, the concession coming off, there's been a lot of coverage and commentary in terms of the safety of public transport, and therefore people, potentially having other means. Also, I would strongly suggest that rising unemployment has something to do with that. There might be more parents at home walking their children to school or dropping their children to school. They're all contributing facts, but yes, there has been a difference to that. What was your other question? Sorry, Councillor.
Oh, is it too early to see whether the $50 cap has done anything to kind of balance that?
Children's fares are still a lot cheaper than adult fares, so they've still got a big discount attached to them. So you won't see that in the $50 cap. You see in the $50 cap, it would be adult travellers, adult commuters that don't have other concessions attached to it. And yes, it's absolutely making a difference to those people. I mean, 8,800 card users last week reached that cap. In terms of that, that sort of looks like saving $50,000 for that cohort of people last week in terms of free trips they got through using the fare cap. So it is making a difference to people.
Okay, Desley.
Thanks. Just a question on contact lists, which is going really well. Do you do a bit of a deep dive onto whether that goes up around events and things that we do, i.e. bringing visitors, or just the day-to-day? I'm just interested in whether people are just using it every day or whether it's peaking at times that we have major events or things that happen. So it's more used by visitors and Aucklanders.
Absolutely. We sort of looked at it where it was being used the most, and it's definitely, you can sort of see it come through in terms of more some of that leisure use of public transport. Definitely. You can see it there. So, I mean, Waiheke has really taken it up in great means in terms of, you can see it being used quite largely across the likes of Waiheke. Tamaki Link is one service that has a higher percentage in comparison to others. Ferry services is, a little bit above that, what I call the bus average as well. But yes, you can definitely see it in terms of key events and things sort of happening across the network. What we could do is provide a bit more information to you, Councillor, if you like, or to the committee in terms of where we're seeing it used the most, because we have developed the dashboard for that too, to show you. Yeah.
Thanks. Shane.
Thank you, Chair. In Q2, did you undertake a financial prioritisation exercise to cover the $8.8 million in unbudgeted expenditure? And if not, when will the results of that be available?
In Q2, our estimate was more than 8.8 million. No, we hadn't prioritised it, rebalanced the investment. At that stage, we also understood that NZTA would be funding more than the current 50%. What we now know is that it's 8.8 million or less. We're looking at refining that, and we're working with the NZTA about how to fund it. We have not resolved the budget issue, and it has changed substantially from Q2.
Thank you. And just the second part of my question, when will the results of that prioritisation be available? We've got a workshop next week. Is there a chance we're going to know what's being suspended or cut?
None of that, and a very similar answer to this in this meeting as to what I had last time, and that is that our obligation is to comply with the law. We will be undertaking this work, and then we will we'll have to work with council as funder and our board to look at how we reconcile it. But it might be that we can slow some things down to accommodate the cost. We're trying to work it within our overall budget approval, rather than stop something to deliver this piece. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Just to be clear, that the date for the workshop has not been set. It will be as soon as possible. It's not next week. Okay, no further questions. Someone like to move? Thank Chris. Thanks, Wayne. Those in favour say aye. Oh, sorry. Woo, stop. Yes. No, we're going to have a debate, are we? Discussion? Are we going to have a debate or a discussion? Okay, none. Put the move. Those in favour say aye. And against, carried. Thanks, team. Next